Hello everyone. It is really, really cold today outside, so I'm really bundled up, but I still wanted to talk to you. We're going to talk about a Star Trek term called infinite diversity and infinite combinations. It's from Star Trek. It focuses on inclusion, and it comes from an essay that I wrote that was published on StarTrek.com in 2021 on February 22nd, 2021 to be exact. You know, I published this essay because I was going through some stuff and I really was just struggling to be heard and struggling to help people understand what it was like to live with disabilities. And I wasn't getting heard, so I decided to write an essay about it. And so I wrote this essay and I pitched it to StarTrek.com, and so it got published. And it's on the website to this day. And I truly feel that Star Trek is a part of me because it helps me to identify with who I am as a person. Because I am definitely an example of infinite diversity and infinite combinations. I'm a person with disabilities. I've got ADHD, nonverbal learning disorder, which is probably on the spectrum depending on what version of the DSM you look at. And I've got endometriosis. I am infinite diversity and infinite combinations. And Star Trek teaches that being different than others, being different, existing differently, thriving differently, it's not bad. It's wonderful to be different. I mean, it shows that not everybody accepts differences. Star Trek definitely shows that not everybody accepts differences, but it also shows that people are allowed to stand tall at being unique and do it courageously. IDIC includes me, and that's why it's been so much easier to be happy at being who I am. You know, Star Trek definitely has factored into that. And yes, I've been a Trekkie for a long time. I was born in 1987. Can you believe that? And apparently when I was a little kid, my family and I used to watch The Next Generation on the television. We didn't have a lot of TV, but we definitely watched The Next Generation as a family. Me, my parents, and my little brother. And that was our thing. It was amazing, as far as I know. So anyway, these disabilities of mine, they make me stand apart from they who are normal. And you know, I was only diagnosed accurately in about 2009, after years of having a misdiagnosis hanging over my head, after having to be on medication that would normalize me. I mean, I went off cold turkey, those medications for my disability, when I turned 18 because I just didn't want to do it anymore. I felt like I was being controlled. I didn't feel like I was myself. I felt like a robot. I didn't feel like myself. I wasn't normal, but on medication, I didn't feel like I was myself either. So I just quit taking the medication, and you know, being normal, it's overrated, really. I learned how to become in control of my own disability. And you know what? It's interesting to learn how to become in control of your own self when your brain isn't in control. When your brain is built differently and you see the world differently and people are aware that you see the world differently, it's not always easy. It's really not always easy. But You learn how to cope. You learn how to thrive. You truly learn how to be your best self, no matter what people think of you. You learn how to have joy in yourself. But people, they don't get it, and you shouldn't expect them to. Like, it's okay to stand out. It's okay that people don't get the disability experience. But it wasn't okay with me at first. It took time for me to accept myself as I am. It's always been a feeling of like I'm an alien in a world of humans, because I see the world in situations differently than others, and it's been more often than not a lonely path to tread. It's been a lonely path, but I've made the path at least a pretty path. A creative path. A path full of my artistry so that it doesn't have to be dark as well as lonely. I used to see my neurodivergency as a burden a lot of the time, but I've worked very hard to see it as a blessing. It's a blessing that I might be able to teach others, that I might be able to really educate them on how to be better people, and educate myself on how to be more patient with myself, because God forbid I learn to be more patient with myself, right? Because we can always learn to be more patient with ourselves. And just as I was starting to get a handle on things, COVID happened, and then I was left alone with only myself and the internet for company. And then I tried virtual socializing, which doesn't work very well because I do rely on facial cues, and it was just a hard sell. But I did my best to be authentic. I did my best to be kind. I did my best to truly still be a loving, caring person and not let my neurodivergent self and the anxieties connected to it get the better of me. But it's kind of hard to keep just a full handle on oneself when you're in a situation that you can never escape, like constant isolation, constantly staring at yourself, constantly being faced with questions from others online like, if you're so good at things, why aren't you doing better? Like, I was asked that in the course of trying to socialize with others outside my regular circle, and it made me really doubt myself and wonder, am I really doing well, or am I unmanageable and I'm just not seeing it? It really just put me on a loop. It put me on a fixation. It made me think, hey, maybe I'm not as good as I think. Maybe it gave me just a pause. It gave me a lot of reason to be angry at myself. And it made me realize that as far as the world has come, and claiming to love everyone as they are, and claiming to be open about acceptance, and claiming to be open about diversity, there's still a long way to go. And even in the Star Trek world, there's a long way to go. Like, I don't know how many of you watch Star Trek. But despite the Star Trek world proclaiming and standing by the infinite diversity and infinite combinations principle, the reality is that society as a whole is still a long way from actually embracing infinite diversity and infinite combinations. It scares them. Anything different, or even anything difficult to understand, scares society. It truly does. And it shouldn't, because different isn't scary. different may take a little bit of work to understand, but that doesn't mean it's scary. I'm a little bit difficult to understand. I struggle to understand. But that doesn't mean I'm scary, nor does it mean I'm scared to explore life and what it has to offer. I work to fit in. I work to have joy. I work to truly embrace life for what it is. And it's not easy, I'll tell you that. It really is not easy to embrace my authentic self. I'm a writer, I'm an actor, and I'm a creative artist. I filmmake. I do a lot of creative things online that just help me to embrace my authentic self and help me to invite others to embrace their authentic self, and also help me to put my authentic self out there. Like, I do a lot of art ever since I really became ever since I became acquainted with the online world in about 2009. I've been using YouTube as a platform, and now that like Facebook and TikTok and Instagram are things, I've been using those. And I make the most of what opportunities happen to open themselves to me. And for a while, I tried to hide my quirks. I really did. Have you ever heard of masking? Like, you pretend that you are completely normal in masking. You pretend that you don't have quirks so that you can be considered acceptable by those who are around you, so that you can be invited to the best of the opportunities. But masking is exhausting. Masking means you don't accept yourself as you are, or you're afraid that others won't, without really giving them the opportunity to decide whether or not they like the real you. And that's dishonest. It's dishonest to yourself. It's dishonest to the way you were made. It's dishonest to the God who made you with his hands. And it's dishonest to others who really might want to get to know the real you. I mean, not everybody wants to get to know the real you. Not everybody's going to be happy with your authentic self, but at least give them the real chance to let people get to know you. Don't mask. I mean, I used to do it all the time. I used to hide my quirks so I could function professionally, because when employers heard the word disability, when employers heard that word, they would go, we don't want to touch that. I mean, your qualifications, they're a lot. Your skills are a lot. You've got a lot in your portfolio, but disability? No. That means you're unmanageable. Well, we'll take a pass, thanks. We'll just move on. Like, I tend to think about how that makes me like Julian Bashir from Star Trek Deep Space Nine. He was genetically engineered into something he wasn't, just because his parents were ashamed that he was born with severe disabilities. And this secret eventually came out. But for a while, he was obsessed with hiding his true self. He was so obsessed because he was ashamed of what was beyond his control. He was ashamed that he was born so severely disabled, and he was ashamed that he wasn't considered acceptable that way, and that his parents took him and turned him into something that he was not, because they desired better. And they changed him into something that he was not because they desired better. He was ashamed that he was not considered worthy of love as he was. So he tried to hide what he had been turned into because he didn't accept the pain that he had been put through. And I mean, he didn't have to. That was awful. His parents should have accepted him for how he was. They should have loved him for how he was. Instead, they made a designer baby out of him. It's like god awful. They shouldn't have done that. You know, even though he was genetically engineered, he still had his neurodivergency, and his quirks made people not like him immediately. I'm sure they definitely grew to love him in time, but they kept their distance at first. And, you know, even just one, Garrick, found him interesting. Others just severely underappreciated and took advantage of him just because of who he was. You know, I can empathize with Julian's struggles, as I often find myself misunderstood and shunned over my lack of social intelligence, despite all my skills, despite all the good that I can bring to whatever opportunities I'm in, to whatever piece of the world I'm trying to make space in. I'm capable of learning my place in an opportunity. I'm capable of bringing great joy to whatever space of the world that I'm in. But it is not a quick process. I'm very prone to making mistakes. And I'm very prone to being a little much sometimes. But you know what? I try my best. And sometimes I need more patience over my pace, over the pace that I have to get things, because I don't always get things quickly. And people don't always show compassion over my pace. You know, I'm also, as I think about these experiences, I'm also like Reginald Barclay. Holy God, he was bullied a lot in Star Trek. If you've ever seen Star Trek The Next Generation, Reginald Barclay was bullied so badly by his shipmates because of his anxiety. He was even called Broccoli. His anxiety was mocked. He was marginalized as someone insignificant. He was just seen as a person of little worth just because he had trouble asserting power over his disability and getting anyone to take him seriously. God help me, this poor person. Because Barclay was very much a marginalized person. He was considered not significant. But he eventually proved his worth. He helped in a very serious situation in which Voyager was just trying to reach out, trying to be understood, trying to be heard. He helped connect Voyager to the connection of Starfleet. That was his doing. He showed how small and simple things can bring great things to pass. And Spock, oh, God bless Spock. God bless all the Spocks. He was considered an outcast because of how he was. He struggled in school. He struggled with friends. He struggled to be accepted by his own father. Because his own father did not like that he was different. I suppose Spock and I have that in common. My own father struggled to accept me as I was. And he couldn't. Simply because some can't. Some can't accept people that are different than them, and it doesn't make them terrible people. It makes them in need of compassion. Because some people aren't built to accept that which they can't easily understand. But Spock, despite having very few in his corner, built a life for himself, worked to bring good opportunities unto himself, and worked to care for himself, and allowed others to see his inner beauty, allowed others to see his inner worth, and he built himself a life that brought him great joy, and he built himself his own community, and so can we all. Worf is the same way. He was undervalued. He was so undervalued, and he was seen as someone who didn't bring a lot to the table because of how he was raised, of how he was made, but he proved his worth. And it doesn't matter about how we were made or how we were raised. We can bring a lot to the table. Data. God bless that android. He literally had a tumultuous upbringing. He was seen as quite the odd one because of how he was made. And he was brought up in tumultuous circumstances. And he had to fight for his right to exist. Like I mentioned when I was 3 years old, I had to really put my trust in someone because I wasn't old enough to speak for myself. Thankfully, someone saw potential in me and kept me out of the group home. Data had to put his trust in someone and have someone speak for him because he was not seen as capable of speaking for himself, and he had to sit and watch others speak about whether or not he was allowed to be free, whether or not he was allowed to be an individual. And so it's very important that we acknowledge these individuals and then also acknowledge ourselves and also acknowledge our voices. We are free to be individuals. I am free to be an individual. We are free to have our voices. And as I reflect on these people and how I am like them, I think about how I always gave my best efforts, like these individuals, to fit in with the big crowd, to speak for myself, to see and treat myself as the human being that I am, and get shot down, and how I wasted so many years trying to be like those who I idolized. And perhaps I should have just been idolizing the fact that I was alive and had the right to have joy and had the right to just be me. Because all of these other individuals that I've spoken of, they tried to be like everybody else and failed, and then they learned to be comfortable in their own shoes. And perhaps that's what I should have been doing. Like, yes, I was a target of bullying and gossip and malice, and I still am because of my divergent self. But so what? I'm still here. I'm still alive. I'm still capable of good things. Never mind that I'm not like anybody else. I'm me, and that's good enough. I am good enough to approach success as I am. You are all good enough to approach success as you are. We are good enough to express faith in our abilities, enough to use them to get what we need to survive, to thrive, and to do so quite happily. You know, there will be lack of understanding from people, but we are worth every bit of effort that we put into ourselves, even if nobody puts effort into us. We are worth every bit of effort that we put into the journey of success that we strive for in our lives. We need to be kind and compassionate and respectful to ourselves, and we need to be okay with being ourselves, because we are good enough as we are. We need to forgive ourselves when we mess up and not give up on our journey to be our best selves, because as we are gifts. And we need to truly embrace that we are gifts and truly realize that even though we may feel we are burdens, we are actually beautiful blessings. The world of Star Trek shows that people go through difficult things every day and not everything is within their control, but it is possible. And Star Trek shows this repeatedly. It is so possible to make the most of life even despite difficulties. And it is possible for people to have faith in their abilities and have faith to accept themselves as they really are. We can accept who we are. We can embrace who we are. And we can remember that infinite diversity and infinite combinations includes us. IDIC includes me. And I'm proud of it.